The April sun spilled soft light through the windows of the Daily Grind Carrie's little coffee shop, where the air always carried the warm, bitter scent of roasted beans. I sat at our usual table, the wooden surface scratched from years of coffee mugs and laughter. Emily, my best friend for 2 decades, leaned forward, her chestnut hair catching the glow. Her smile was wide, almost too bright, as she slid a small velvet box across the table. "Lauren, you're my maid of honor," she said. Her eyes sparkled, but her fingers twitched, silencing a buzzing phone in her purse. I opened the box. A silver bracelet gleamed inside, the word forever engraved in delicate script. My heart warmed, a quiet joy spreading. "Emily, it's beautiful," I said. My voice soft. Her scarf brushed my hand as she leaned in, and I caught a faint whiff of cedarwood, James's cologne, the one my husband wore. A knot formed in my stomach, but I pushed it away. "Just a coincidence," I told myself. "You're the only one I trust with this, Lauren," she said, gripping my hand. Her laugh felt sharp, like it hid something behind that perfect smile. "Always," I replied, the bracelet cool against my wrist. We sipped our coffee, the steam curling like a memory. I thought of our first meeting at UNC Chapel Hill 20 years ago, when a rained-out tailgate left us huddled under a tarp, sharing soggy pretzels and dreams. Sisters forever, we'd promised, giggling in the mud. Those late-night calls, bad breakups, my mom's lasagna recipe, we'd perfected together, they'd woven us tight. "You're gonna kill it as maid of honor," Emily teased, stirring her latte. "Only if you stop changing the menu." I shot back, grinning. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, her smile flickering, and tucked it away. I sipped my coffee, the bitter warmth grounding me, but that knot lingered. Back home, the azaleas in our Carrie yard bloomed vivid pink, their petals swaying in the spring breeze. Minivans lined the street, neighbors prepping for Easter, with pastel wreaths on their doors. I stood in my kitchen, the hum of the dishwasher, a familiar song, and brewed chamomile tea. The mug was chipped, a gift from James when we moved here. I smiled, stirring honey, its floral steam rising. James was late as usual, his ESPN game flickering in the living room. I sat at the counter, my planner open, sticky notes, marking wedding tasks. Venue calls, dress fittings, florist emails. My laptop glowed and I checked our shared email, expecting vendor replies. One message stopped me. "Emily to James, subject blank, sent at 7 p.m. Meet at 7. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Catering plans. I reasoned. James's cologne lingered in the air, sharp and familiar as he'd left for work. I closed the laptop, the planner's pages fluttering. "Late meeting?" I asked when he walked in, his jacket slung over his shoulder. "Yeah, work," he mumbled, his phone glowing in his hand. His eyes didn't meet mine. I nodded, organizing my daughter's lunchbox. For preschool, apple slices, a cheese stick, a scribbled note. "Love you, kiddo." The kitchen clutter with its quilted placemats and Easter candy bags for neighbors felt like a shield. But at the caterer's meeting the next day, Emily's laugh rang out too close to James's side. Her hand brushed his arm, lingering. He didn't pull away. My fingers froze on the bracelet's clasp, its metal biting my skin. My heart skipped a quiet alarm. They've always been close, I told myself. I'm overthinking this, right? I smiled, the azaleas outside swaying, but doubt settled like dust. Sometimes the smallest cracks hide the deepest truths. That night, I opened our shared email again. One new message from Emily to James, time-stamped midnight. She doesn't suspect a thing. My breath caught the tea mug cold in my hands. Would I ignore it or dig deeper? Ever had a gut feeling you couldn't shake? Share your story. Where are you listening from? Winter's chill seeped through my home office window. The bare trees outside Carrie's sidewalks dusted with a light snow. I sat at my cluttered desk, a flickering lamp casting shadows over my daughter's crayon drawings pinned to a corkboard. The laptop screen glowed, Emily's email to James, burning into me. Hotel tonight, my best friend, my husband. My trust shattered in a single click. I hovered over the keyboard, fingers trembling, the faint hum of the heater, a distant comfort. That midnight message from last spring, she doesn't suspect a thing, still haunted me, a splinter I couldn't pull out. I clicked, saving the email, the keys cold under my touch. My worn wedding ring glinted heavy on my finger, a reminder of vows now frayed. At lunch, I scrolled local news on my phone, the Harris Teeter deli counter buzzing behind me. I bought groceries, milk, bread, a box of my daughter's favorite cereal, my list scrawled on a fridge note. The plastic bags crinkled in my trunk, the winter air sharp as I drove home. I unpacked the fridge's lights spilling over my hands and paused at a photo on the counter. Our wedding, Emily's arm linked with mine. James's smile wide. My thumb brushed the frame, its wood smooth, but my chest tightened. James came home late, his coat dusted with snow. Long day, I asked, stirring soup on the stove. Its steam savory with thyme. Just work stress, he said, his eyes avoiding mine. Phone glowing in his pocket. His voice was thin, a crack I couldn't ignore. I remembered planning our wedding with Emily, her laughter as we pinned flowers to my veil. I'll always have your back, she'd promised, her hand warm on mine. Now that memory felt like a lie, cold as the snow outside. The next day I visited Emily's townhouse, her living room, a chaos of bridal magazines and vanilla-scented candles. Their waxy glow flickered, the rustle of tulle from her gown filling the space. She poured me wine, the glass cool in my hand. "You're too stressed," she said, her smile rehearsed like she was playing a part I didn't yet understand. "Work's piling up," I replied, my eyes drifting to her open laptop. A folder labeled J sat on the desktop. I reached for it, but she slid the laptop away. Her laugh forced. "Let me handle the vendors," she said, handing me a swatch of fabric. I nodded, the wine's tartness sharp on my tongue. That night I tucked my daughter into bed, her stuffed bunny soft under her arm. I read her a story, the pages worn, her breath slowing. The house was quiet, James still out. I slipped into his closet, my fingers brushing his jacket pocket. A hotel receipt dated our anniversary crinkled in my hand, its ink stark under the lamplight. My marriage, my best friend. How could I be so blind? I sat on the couch, the receipt trembling, snow falling silently outside. The weight of juggling work calls and wedding duties pressed heavy. My daughter's bunny, a reminder of what I'd built. Sometimes the truth hides in the folds of what we refuse to see. I snuck back to Emily's the next morning, her laptop unguarded. The J folder opened a photo of her and James tangled in my bed, their smiles a knife in my heart. My breath stopped. Should I confront them now or wait for the perfect moment? Early spring light filtered through my living room, soft and pale, catching the edges of my faded couch. I sat cross-legged, a leather memory book open in my lap, its pages stiff with taped screenshots. Emily and James, their betrayal caught in cold pixels. 3 weeks until her wedding. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to act. I poured coffee, its nutty steam curling from a chipped mug, the warmth steadying my hands. My radio hummed NPR, a low murmur of news, while dogwood buds peeked through the window, their pale blooms a promise against Carrie's gray sky. I flipped open my planner, sticky notes fluttering like moths. Call florist. Check seating chart. Order programs. The tasks were a lifeline, but that image of them in my bed, seared from Emily's laptop, burned behind my eyes. I walked Cooper, my dog, through the neighborhood, his leash loose in my hand. The dusk air carried a faint jasmine scent, cool and sharp. Carrie families lingered at the park, kids, chasing kites, their laughter drifting. I paused to adjust Cooper's collar, his fur soft, and rechecked my daughter's homework later. Her pencil marks tidy. My chipped nail polish, frayed from stress, caught the lamplight. I remembered a dark morning years ago after my miscarriage. Emily had sat with me, her hand steady, promising I'm here always. That memory now twisted, her betrayal slicing deeper. At Emily's townhouse, I stood by her dining table, a floral centerpiece spilling pink petals. She adjusted her veil, its lace glowing under the chandelier. I stirred my tea, the spoon clinking against porcelain. "Found something odd in your emails," I said, my voice light, testing her reaction. She froze, her fingers tightening on the veil. "You're imagining things," she said, laughing, but her eyes darted to the side. "Weddings make everyone paranoid." "Maybe," I replied, the tea's peppermint sharp on my tongue. Her quick deflection was a spark igniting my resolve. I drove home, NPR's evening broadcast a murmur in my car, and sorted laundry in the dim living room. The scent of detergent lingered, the hum of the dryer a steady rhythm. I taped another screenshot into the memory book, the adhesives tug sharp my hands. Precise despite the ache in my chest. The rehearsal dinner at the Umstead Hotel was a shimmer of candlelight and crystal. I wore a navy dress, its fabric brushing my knees, and smiled as Nathan the groom raised a glass. To Lauren, our anchor, he said, his voice warm, his eyes kind. "I hope I'm worthy," I murmured, my throat tight. James sat across the room, his jaw clenched, his fingers drumming on the table. He avoided my gaze, his discomfort a silent confession. I slipped the memory book to the venue coordinator, its velvet cover smooth against my palm. "Present this during my speech," I whispered, my pulse loud in my ears. She nodded, her eyes unquestioning. Emily clinked her glass against mine. her smile wide, her lavender perfume sharp. Best maid of honor ever, she said, her hand brushing mine. Oblivious to the storm I was brewing, I nodded, the wine's bite lingering, the spring breeze cool through the open doors. The hotel's chandelier-lit ballroom sparkled its elegance, a stark contrast to the weight I carried. I stepped into the hallway for air, the glow dimming. Emily's voice drifted from a shadowed corner, low and smug. "She's clueless," she whispered to James, their silhouettes close. My fingers curled into my palm nails, biting skin. I wasn't just exposing them. I was reclaiming my life. Back home, the living room was dark, the couch's worn fabric cool. Under my thighs, I opened the memory book, my pen. Scratching a final note, "This is our real story." The radio's jazz faded, a soft echo in the silence. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought in quiet corners. The wedding was tomorrow. My memory book was ready, hidden in velvet. Would I go through with it or lose my nerve at the altar? The April dusk settled over Carrie, a cool spring breeze slipping through my open bedroom window. I stood at my ironing board, steam rising in gentle clouds, smoothing the wrinkles from my emerald dress. Its fabric shimmered faintly, a promise of tomorrow's weight. The cotton quilt on my bed, its blue patches faded from my mother's careful stitches, draped like a quiet vow. I ran my fingers over its threads, their texture grounding me as I steeled myself for Emily's wedding. The memory book, leather-bound and heavy, rested in my purse, a velvet tomb for the screenshots of her affair with James, my husband. I brewed chamomile tea, the mug's chipped rim warm against my palms. Its floral scent mingled with the faint vanilla of Easter cookies I'd baked that morning, crumbs still scattered on the kitchen counter like forgotten promises. I'd kneaded the dough for hours, each press a bid to calm my trembling heart. Emily's voice lingered from the rehearsal dinner at the Umstead Hotel just hours ago. "You're my sister Lauren," she'd said, her veil catching the chandelier's soft glow. Her hug was tight, her lavender perfume sharp, almost stinging. I'd adjusted the lace, my hand steady despite the ache inside. Always I'd whispered, but my heart was ice-frozen by the truth I carried. The rehearsal had been a swirl of white roses and clinking glasses, the hotel's polished floors gleaming under candlelight. Nathan the groom raised a toast, his smile warm, his eyes kind. "To Lauren, our rock," he'd said. I'd nodded, the wine's tart bite sharp on my tongue, while James stood across the room, his tie loose, his gaze skittering away like a guilty child's. I'd slipped the memory book to the coordinator, her quick nod sealing its fate. The scent of lilies hung heavy, thick with expectation. The ballroom's elegance a fragile mask over my resolve. Now, in my bedroom, I sank onto the quilt, its softness cradling my thighs. My radio played a low jazz tune, notes curling like smoke in the dim light. I thought of a summer long ago. Emily and I driving to Wrightsville Beach, windows down, laughing over a flat tire and her sunburned nose. "We're forever," she'd said, her voice bright as the sea. Those words now crumbled ash in the lamplight, her betrayal a wound I'd held too long. I sorted through a basket of laundry, the scent of fresh detergent, a faint comfort, folding my daughter's pajamas with care. Her small socks patterned with stars reminded me of bedtime stories, read under a glowing lamp, her breath soft and even. The house was quiet. James still out, his absence a shadow. I opened my planner, its pages dog-eared, and traced the wedding tasks. Centerpieces, music vows. Each note was a step toward tomorrow, a path I couldn't turn from. My phone rang, Emily's name flashing on the screen. I hesitated, the tea's warmth fading in my hands. The mug cool against my skin. "You'll be there tomorrow, right?" Her voice was soft, laced with nerves, a bride's fragile hope. "I'll be there," I said, my words calm, steady as stone. Rain streaked the window, its patter mirroring the choice I'd made. I hung up resolve, a quiet flame in my chest. Sometimes the hardest truths bloom in silence. I lifted the dress bag, tucking the memory book beneath it, its weight a solemn vow. I stood by the window, the rain's rhythm steady, the spring night cool against my cheek. I thought of my daughter asleep down the hall, her dreams untouched by the storm. For her, for me, I would face tomorrow. The Umstead's ballroom would shine its chandeliers bright. Could I bear the fall of Emily's smile, or would my courage waver? Easter Sunday's light streamed through the prep suite's tall windows at the Umstead Hotel, bright and unrelenting like a truth I could no longer bury. I stood by a vase of fresh daisies, their crisp green scent cutting through the champagne's sharp fizz. Emily spun in her gown silk, whispering against the hardwood floor, a soft rustle in the morning's hush. "I'm so lucky," she said, adjusting her veil, its lace glowing in the mirror's soft gleam like a fragile crown. "You'll see," I replied, zipping her dress, my fingers cold but steady. My silver earrings glinted heavy against my lobes, swaying as I moved. The suite buzzed with bridesmaids, their pastel dresses fluttering like spring petals, their laughter a distant hum. My pulse raced a steady drumbeat, the memory book pressed against my clutch. Its leather cover, cool and unyielding, held the screenshots of Emily and James's affair, a wound I'd carry to the altar. I arranged the daisy's petals soft under my fingertips, their stems firm in the crystal vase. My garden in Kerry came to mind, where I'd planted those flowers after our first anniversary. James had kissed me under the porch light, his laugh warm, his hands gentle. Now his betrayal with Emily, etched in that book's stark pages, was a silent scream. I glanced at my phone, a work voicemail blinking its urgency irrelevant. The champagne flute was icy in my palm bubbles, rising like secrets breaking free. I sipped the sweet's chatter, fading, my daughter's face flashing before me, her small hand waving from the preschool door, her trust in me a weight I couldn't fail. I smoothed my emerald dress, its fabric brushing my knees, and walked to the ballroom heels, clicking on the polished oak floor. The space was a sea of white roses, their perfume thick, mingling with murmurs from 200 guests in Easter finery hats, adorned with ribbons, ties in soft blues. The 5-tier cake loomed its sugar flowers, pristine, a monument to a day already fracturing. I set the memory book on the podium, its leather cool under my palm, and took the mic. My dress shimmered under the chandeliers. Each step a choice carved in resolve. "Emily and I share everything," I said. My voice clear, pausing as eyes turned to me. The room stilled, glasses glinting in hands, the clink of crystal hushed, our dreams, our secrets. I opened the book, its pages crisp, the sound slicing the silence. Even my husband. Gasps erupted, a tide crashing over the crowd. I turned the pages. Screenshots of their emails flashing on the projector screen, words stark, undeniable. A photo appeared, Emily and James tangled in my bed, their smiles a blade through my heart. Emily screamed, "Stop it!" Her veil trembled, her face draining to ash. Eyes wide with panic. James bolted his chair, scraping footsteps echoing as he vanished into the crowd. Nathan the groom stood frozen, his wineglass trembling, his gaze locked on the book, betrayal dawning in his eyes. I stepped forward, heels steady, and handed him the book. "This is the truth," she hid. I said, my voice unwavering, cutting through the chaos. Glasses shattered, shards catching the light, the rose perfume cloying, almost suffocating. Emily lunged, sobbing, her hands grasping at the air. But I stepped back, earrings swaying, my breath even. The spring air chilled my skin as I walked toward the exit, the ballroom's warmth dissolving behind me. I passed the cake, its frosting untouched, and thought of my daughter's birthday last month. We'd smeared icing on her cheeks, her giggles filling our kitchen, a joy I'd fought to protect. This wasn't vengeance, it was truth for her, for me. The hotel's heavy doors closed softly, muffling the shouts, the sobs, the whispers. Grace grows in quiet moments, not in the storm's roar. Outside, sunlight warmed my face, soft and forgiving. Azaleas bloomed vivid pink along the path, their scent faint, a whisper of spring. I stood still, the breeze lifting my hair, my clutch light without the book's burden. I'd bared their lies, but the world's verdict waited. Would I be called a hero or a villain? October's golden light spilled across my Asheville porch, the mountain breeze cool and sharp against my cheeks. I sat in a rocking chair, Cooper curled at my feet, his tail brushing the weathered planks. A knit blanket, soft and heavy, with lavender's faint scent, warmed my lap. My journal lay open, pages worn, ink smudging as I wrote. "I'm free." Chrysanthemums from the farmer's market stood in a clay vase, their earthy tang a quiet anchor rooting me to this new life I'd built. 6 months had passed since Emily's wedding, since I'd opened that memory book and let truth flood the ballroom. I'd read online that Emily was ousted from her charity board, her name a hushed murmur in Carrie's tight-knit circles. James faced a job investigation, his reputation unraveling like frayed thread. I felt no joy, only relief, like slipping off a heavy coat in spring. I arranged the chrysanthemum's petals velvet under my fingers and heard my mother's voice steady as stone. "Stand tall no matter who falls." I brewed tea, the mug's ceramic smooth chamomile's floral scent rising in delicate curls. The porch creaked as I rocked, autumn leaves rustling, their crimson and gold drifting across the yard like scattered dreams. I thought of a winter evening years ago, Emily and I wrapped in scarves sipping cocoa at a Carrie festival, planning my daughter's first Christmas. Her laughter had been a beacon, then warm and bright. Now it echoed hollow, her betrayal a scar I'd learned to carry, its edges softened by time. My phone pinged Jane from my book club, texting about my new marketing project, her words sparking pride. I smiled, picturing the bookstore's oak shelves, their grain worn by years of hands. Last night we'd gathered there, coffee's nutty aroma blending with the creak of the old floor. Jane shared tales of her divorce, her voice breaking, then lifting with laughter. Cooper napping by my chair. Her resilience mirrored mine, a quiet thread binding us. Nathan had called weeks ago, his tone calm, measured. "You saved me from a lie, Lauren," he'd said. "We saved ourselves," I replied, my hand stroking Cooper's warm fur, the phone cool against my ear. I walked to the kitchen, linoleum cool. Under my bare feet, and opened a drawer. Emily's letter sat inside, its envelope creased unopened. I lifted it, paper sharp against my skin, but set it down. Her words held no power now. I sliced an apple for my daughter's lunch, the knife's rhythm, steady juice pooling on the cutting board. Her favorite mug painted with stars waited on the counter, a small piece of our shared world. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, casting long shadows. The house quiet except for the tick of a clock. I prepared for a women's group meeting, packing my journal. Its leather cover scuffed. Cooper's leash dangled in my hand, leaves crunching underfoot as we walked. The mountain air was crisp, fading Halloween pumpkins, lining the path, their carved grins softening. I passed a neighbor raking leaves, her wave warm, and felt Asheville's embrace, its small-town rhythm a balm. The meeting room was cozy, faces open, expectant. I stood, my voice clear, steady. "Betrayal didn't break me," I said. "It showed my strength." Applause rose, gentle but sure, a ripple of shared understanding. I drove home, a folk tune humming on the radio, and pulled Emily's letter from the drawer. I crumpled it, the papers cracked sharp, and tossed it into the trash. My daughter's laughter drifted from her room, a melody of trust I'd fought to keep. I thought of her small hand in mine, her questions about the stars, her belief in my answers. That was my legacy, not the pain I'd left behind. I stepped onto the porch, Cooper trailing, and closed my journal. The breeze whispered, leaves swirling, carrying a new beginning. Sometimes what's left unsaid lingers longest. My life was open, a canvas unwritten. Would I forgive or rise stronger? The October breeze carried a whisper of chrysanthemums, their scent lingering on my Asheville porch as I watched the sunset's glow fade. I held my daughter's hand, her laughter a soft promise of tomorrow. Dignity is built in quiet choices, in choosing family over pain. A truth I've learned living here in America's heartland. If this story touched you, share your journey below. You are not alone. November's crisp air swept across my Asheville porch, the mountain silhouette sharp against a fading sky. I stood by the railing, a wool scarf loose around my neck, its fibers soft from years of wear. Cooper bounded in the yard, chasing leaves, his bark a joyful echo. A tray of freshly baked scones cooled on the table, their buttery scent mingling with the pine tang drifting from the hills. I sipped cider, the mug warm, its apple sweetness sharp on my tongue, grounding me in this quiet life I'd woven. A year had passed since Emily's wedding, since I'd laid bare her affair with James. Their shadows no longer haunted me. I'd heard Emily had moved to Raleigh, her name rarely mentioned now. James had settled elsewhere, his career a faint echo of what it was. I felt no bitterness, only a calm release, like leaves falling to rest. I set the mug down, its ceramic clinking softly, and adjusted a potted mum, its burgundy petals vibrant against the porch's gray wood. My mother's words lingered, "Build your life on what lasts." I walked inside, the hardwood floor, cool under my socks, and opened my planner. Its pages, once crowded with wedding tasks, now held notes for my daughter's school playbook club dates and a new client pitch. I smiled, tracing the ink pride swelling for the work I'd reclaimed. My daughter's drawing, a stick figure family with Cooper, hung on the fridge, its colors bright. I thought of a spring afternoon years back when Emily and I painted her nursery, giggling over paint cans, dreaming of her future. That memory, once painful, now felt distant, softened by time's gentle hand. Jane called, her voice warm through the phone. Ready for book club tonight? She asked, laughter in her tone. Wouldn't miss it, I said, stirring a pot of soup carrots bobbing in the broth, its savory steam rising. The bookstore was a haven, its oak shelves gleaming under soft lights. We gathered around a table, coffee's nutty aroma blending with the rustle of pages. Jane shared a story of her son's graduation. Her eyes bright while another friend spoke of a lost job, her voice steady. I listened, Cooper's head on my lap, his warmth a comfort. I found strength after loss. I said my words quiet. It's not the fall that defines us. It's the rising. Nods rippled, hands reaching for mine. A circle of shared resilience. I drove home, a folk tune humming on the radio. The mountain road winding under starlight. My daughter greeted me, her hair messy. A book in hand. Read to me, she asked, climbing onto the couch. I pulled her close, the book's pages soft, her breath slowing as I read. Her trust, her laughter was my anchor. A legacy of love I'd fought for. I thought of Emily's unopened letter discarded months ago, its absence a quiet justice. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give, it was mine to release, a choice made for my family's peace. The next day I spoke at a community center, women gathered in folding chairs, their faces open. Pain shapes us, I said, my voice clear, but love rebuilds us. Applause followed, warm and earnest, their stories spilling afterward, divorces, losses, new starts. I listened, a tray of scones passed around, their buttery crumbs, a small offering. Back on my porch, I closed my planner, the breeze carrying a hint of frost. My daughter's swing swayed in the yard, Cooper sprawled nearby. I felt whole, rooted in this place, this life. Sometimes the quietest choices leave the loudest legacy. What's next for me? I'm ready to find out.